So in this segment, we're gonna do a video I put off for reasons, not great reasons, but better late than never, I guess. So we're gonna be discussing the ongoing conflict between Israel and Palestine, and buckle up because this is not going to be an easy video to watch or to listen to. I'll be honest. So this on both sides committing war crimes. This article from the Associated Press, the AP, it's clear. Both sides have been accused of committing war crimes. So, quote, intentional targeting of civilians and civilian objects without a militarily necessary reason to do so is a war crime. Period. End quote. Said David Crane, an American international law expert and founding chief prosecutor of the United Nations Special Court for Sierra Leone, saying, quote, and that's a standard that both sides are held to under international law. End quote. And what Hamas did in their attack on a peace rally, on their attack on a village. It was a small border village. Is a war crime. There's no two ways about it. They went in, they burnt down houses. There were massive exaggerations on exactly what Hamas did, which is incredibly stupid to make exaggerations on things that are war crimes because you just lose credibility when you do that. But what Hamas did is a blatant act of terror. Attacking civilians, burning down houses, taking hostages at a peace rally. What Hamas did was just so beyond the pale. And people, that people have tried to claim like strategic reasons. Like there's no strategic reasons to commit war crimes. Like we'll discuss the specifics of what Hamas did in a minute, because I did find some interesting tweets on that. Speaking of Israel here, the Israeli military has pulverized large parts of the Hamas-ruled Gaza Strip. Hamas, which rule Gaza with an iron fist. These are not a democratically elected. These guys haven't had elections in ages. They very much rule with an iron fist. This is not a good group of people. But Israel have blocked deliveries of food, water, fuel, and electricity ahead of a possible ground invasion. This is a siege, a blockade. This is old school siege warfare where you starve out a group of people. And we'll be discussing more of the impacts on that in a few minutes, along with other potential war crimes here. But experts say the blockade, which is hitting the territory of more than 2 million residents, violates international law, saying, quote, collective punishment is a war crime. Israel is doing that by cutting electricity, food, water, blocking aid from entering the Gaza Strip. End quote. Shakir saying one of the experts they have spoken to, and there are claims that Israel have turned back on the water, but based on other kind of reporting and tweets I've seen from other people, that turning on the water doesn't help right now because there's no electricity, and a lot of the pipes have been destroyed, a lot of the infrastructure has been destroyed. The plant that purifies the water has run out of fuel, so turning on the pipes is great when a lot of them wouldn't be working right now, and a lot of them the water can't be purified because I don't think Gaza has really any access to fresh water. So this is just a propaganda stunt, really. I think Joe Biden got a lot of credit for them ending the water blockade, but it's not really ended, and I don't think there's a ton of evidence of them even allowing water in to Gaza, anyways. The International Committee of the Red Cross said the order to leave. So this is when Israel have told people to leave from the north to go to the south. The Red Cross have said these are quote are not compatible with international humanitarian law. End quote. Sorry, I've kind of bungled that one a bit. But point being is that what Israel are doing here breaches international law. They have pushed people to the south of Gaza, saying that they will be safer over there. Then they have still bombed those areas. They've bombed near the Rafah crossing. But we'll discuss that in a few minutes. One sec. This is the one I wanted. So this from Jacob Magid, the US bureau writer for the Times of Israel. Again, sourcing might be a bit sus here, but it's kind of biased here. It's a bit of confirmation bias on my part, I'll be honest. But from what I've read, from what he's saying is Qatar is working to coax Hamas to release the women, children and elderly hostages that the terror group is currently holding in Gaza after taking them hostage after last week's onslaught in southern Israel when they went in there, raided the village and the peace rally. Hamas being represented in the talks by their leader abroad, Ismail Haniyeh, initially told Qatar that it was prepared to return those hostages in exchange for Israel releasing 36 female and teenage Palestinian security prisoners currently in Israeli jails. And we don't know why these people were taken prisoner. We don't know if they were civilians or most likely they were, given that these settlements are clear breaches of international law anyway. Some of the stuff that's been going on over there, abhorrent. The diplomatic source said the offer was not entertained by Israel, which is primarily focusing on advancing its military campaign to eradicate Hamas. So if it's the case that Hamas have offered to release the prisoners in exchange for a prison exchange and Israel have said no, that's pretty stupid, especially given that some of the people who have been taken, been captured by Hamas, are foreign nationals. A second source familiar with the negotiations tells Times of Israel that some in Hamas recognize that taking women, children, and elderly people hostage has given Israel more international legitimacy to expand its military campaign against the terrorist group. Israel have been saying forever that Hamas are despotic, that they are a terrorist group. What all Hamas have done is confirm that. What kind of group raids a village, raids a peace rally, murders people indiscriminately, and takes people hostage? What kind of group would do that? These are non-military targets. It's a clear war crime. All Hamas have done is confirm what Israel have been saying about them for forever, that they are a terrorist group. Attacking an area with foreign nationals is just so strategically is the dumbest thing. One of the dumbest things I've ever seen. Especially when you've killed people who are citizens of countries who have been massive supporters of Palestine. There were Irish citizens that were killed in that raid. Ireland being one of the biggest supporters of an independent Palestine. It's just beggars belief that what this lot were thinking. I have no idea. Committing war crimes and just in the most counterproductive of ways. Like they couldn't have done this any worse than they did. But the only thing that they've kind of done, I think, is woken up Israel to the danger of Hamas a bit, because they're taking their eye off Hamas. I did see a video from Warographics. They do really interesting videos where there were allegations that Israel had focused more on the West Bank and settlement expansion in the West Bank, and moved some of the kind of military units and policing over there. Let's see here. This from Hussam Zomlot. I'm sorry, I'm mispronouncing your name. This is a guy who every interview I've seen him in, he has been incredible. This is a person who has lost family members in Gaza and is still at risk of losing more family members. Him saying, quote, "A few seconds saved my nephew, Ahmad 8, from being killed today. An Israeli bomb struck a residential building that contained a shop in South Gaza where he was going to buy bread along with other children who had been forcibly displaced from the north." And let's not forget, we've seen huge queues of people to go to get bread, because that's all they have. There's not much left there. He says, "This is the kind of war crime the US and UK are enabling with their unequivocal support for Israel. Inconsiderable, immoral, and illegal. Our people will not allow for a second Nakba." So a Nakba is when I think Palestinian people were forcibly moved out of their homes effectively, and their homes were taken. The UK and international community need to ensure protection for Palestinian civilians, since the occupying power is clearly intent on more mass killing and destruction. He says, enough. This from Alistair Bucknell. This is kind of going off topic slightly, but he's claiming, from what he's hearing, the Iranians don't want to get involved, and they were very surprised at what Hamas managed to actually do, and how far they actually managed to get before being stopped. I would wager, given the history of it, the recent history of Iran is very good at arming kind of militias and proxies. So I would not believe that, especially when one of the one of the Iranian ministers has said something on the lines of, "If we don't stop the bombs in Gaza today, there'll be bombs falling on us tomorrow." Similar to what Western people have been saying about Russia and Ukraine, to be fair. So city on its knees now with 1 million mouths to feed. So a tide of humanity is washed into Khan Yunis. Hundreds of thousands flee from here, from north, on wherever they could carry them. Cars, horses, a cart if one could be found. This is an incredibly small kind of area, and you have lots of people being pushed into the city. Gaza already having has a huge population density, and it's only being made worse. There are stories of around 90 people in a house, seeking kind of safety together and hoping that the bombs don't fall on them. This is crazy. This has been called a war crime as well. Forcing people out of their homes like this. We've seen stories of hospitals facing impossible choices with Israel's evacuation order, because Israel have told them to evacuate the hospitals. When hospitals became legitimate military targets, I don't know. Fuel reserves at the hospitals are likely to run out. The UN warns. And I think that's pretty much done. This from yesterday. So time of recording, 17th of October, around 8 p.m. This video is going to go out today. But yeah, this most likely already happened, that the hospitals have run out of fuel. Graphic warning images, I guess. There's another story from The Guardian just come out, which is about fears are growing that people in Gaza are beginning to dehydrate to death as clean water runs out. And there was a story in the AP. It looks like they changed the headline, a couple other bits and pieces, but they said like the blockade of water is going to kill more people potentially than the bombs that are being dropped. There's a reason why collective punishment is a war crime, because innocent people have nothing to do with this. Will die. You know, Hamas most likely they've got tunnels, they're stocked up, they've got enough supplies. The average person doesn't, and this is what's happening now. You're just murdering so many people are going to die because of this. You know, this is the thing I was talking about earlier. The UN's Agency for Palestinian Refugees said on Tuesday that Gaza's last seawater desalination plant had shut down, bringing the risk of further deaths and waterborne diseases such as cholera and dysentery. The 6 water wells, 3 pump stations, and 1 water reservoir, which collectively served more than 1.1 million people, is out of action, and this is partly because of the This is partly because of the fuel blockade. You know, I don't know. You know, almost there's what I'm struggling for words here at this point. People are being starved out. They will die of dehydration. They will die in the worst ways possible. You know, this come off just today as well. We're seeing unconfirmed reports that Israel has bombed 2 hospitals here, one being the Baptist hospital in central Gaza, and another one being the Al Ahli Arab hospital, with hundreds of deaths being reported from, I think it was the Al Ahli hospital. When did hospitals become legitimate military targets? Please, someone explain. You know, surely the international community collectively should be asking Israel, where's your evidence that these are legitimate military targets of what's going on here? Al Jazeera reports that the IDF spokesperson says that they warned regarding evacuating the Al Ahli Baptist, I think it's one hospital, the Al Ahli Baptist Hospital, as well as 5 other hospitals. You know, it's very confusing because it looks like it's listed as 2, but if it's 1, then fair, but it doesn't make it any better. You know, the IDF saying, "Oh, we told you to evacuate the hospital before bombing it. Doctors won't leave their patients," and they've said so. They've been very defiant. One of them saying, "We will not leave the hospital except to heaven," said the hospital director. It's very clear that they were determined to stay with their patients, and they were punished for it. They were punished for it by being bombed. You know, Justin Trudeau has said that what happened at the Al Ahli Baptist Hospital is horrible, is quite horrible, unacceptable, end quote, and attacks on hospitals are illegal. Again, what's he going to do about it? Nothing, probably. A UN peacekeeping force in South Lebanon says its headquarters was struck by a rocket. I wonder who had struck it by a rocket. Very weird. That they don't say it. You know, there was a journalist in Lebanon that was killed as well. They never said who said it. We know who did it. It was Israel that did it. There were, you know, even people who work for the UN who have been killed in Gaza recently. You know, this idea that, you know, the people who say like, oh, it's just collateral damage for destroying Hamas, like, what are you talking about? Like, civilian deaths should never be classed as collateral damage. It's so stupid. You know, Hamas are such a group that, you know, to them, the destruction of Israel comes before anything else, by looks for, at least for parts of Hamas, and so they don't care about Palestinians. They don't. What they want is a holy war. Some parts of them, the more radical elements of them, and they will do anything to get that. I did want to say shout out Hamza Yusuf, who he's been very vocal about this recently. His wife has family in Gaza, and they've both been very vocal about the situation. But you know, Rishi Sunak's been fairly clear that, and James Cleverly as well, that they are backing Israel. They have not condemned Israel for their actions, and yeah, it just goes to show you that, you know, war crimes are okay according to some people, depending on who you ask and who's doing that, I guess. But it's always been like that. An MP has said, this is Layla Moran, saying her extended family have nowhere to go after their house was bombed in Gaza. Israel has blocked food supplies, food, water, fuel and electricity since the Hamas attacks. Ms Moran, who became the UK's first MP of Palestinian descent when she was elected in 2017, she said, quote, "I would like to see Sunak take a more strident stance when it comes to humanitarian aid, in particular when it comes to letting it in," end quote. Some of it he doesn't have control over. It would be the Egyptian border, I think, is closed, and the border is closed right now, and I don't know. Sunak can't do much about that. She talks about the need for international law, about putting civilians first, which I absolutely 100% agree with, and I'm glad that at least she's vocalizing it, given that other parts of the British political parties have been very quiet on this. Also want to say again, shouts out Hamza Yusuf for being probably one of the few party leaders who has actually had a good showing here. Because the other ones, yeah, but I don't want to discuss them too much. If you want a separate video on kind of the response of British politicians for whatever reason, then I'll try and work on that at some point soon. But credit where it's due to Layla Moran, who I wish she was the Lib Dem leader instead. Not because of this, but I think she would have been a much better leadership candidate. And she's kind of proved it with this statement, I guess. And this from President Biden saying, "We must not lose sight of the fact that the overwhelming majority of Palestinians had nothing to do with Hamas's appalling attack and are suffering as a result of them." And what I would like to see is President Joe Biden be a lot more vocal. There are kind of diplomatic things you have to do. Israel is an ally of the US, but allies don't let other allies commit war crimes. I think Joe Biden should. I think that if there's one person, one of the few people in the world that can stop this conflict, it is the Americans. It's the president. I think he can. There's a lot he can do here, and it is unfair to put pressure on one person. But there's a lot he can do. He played a good hand in getting the Americans involved during the Troubles. His legacy could be tremendous at that, helping to stop two major conflicts. A guy with a mixed history, no doubt, but he could sign off in the best way. Hopefully he gets more involved. The Americans are, I think, trying, but I don't know. I don't think they're trying hard enough. I'll be honest. The only way to, I think, resolve this conflict is there has to be. We need to see Palestinian statehood, and we need to see. International agreement on where the borders are, whether it's the 1967 borders or any other kind of UN mandated solution. That's the only way forward, and the only way to stop this stuff happening is that the parts that break international law, these groups are kind of ostracized from the international community. That's the only way I can see this happening, because we've seen Israel go on a tirade of building settlements illegally in the West Bank. And barely anything has been done about it. The UN has passed resolutions against it, but the United Nations Security Council is deadlocked because any nation within the Security Council can veto resolutions, and one country has been doing that. There are a multitude of problems within Palestine, and I think getting Palestinian statehood would be one of the best things we can get to help resolve further kind of escalations. But the end of Gaza being a open air prison has to stop. The blockade has to stop. You have to give people the option of peace. That right now, I don't know what happens here, and there is no hope. There is no hope on this conflict, and I think that kind of to end in probably a harrowing quote, which is, "When the shadows are consumed by even darker shadows, the curtain pulls back and reveals a world with no light," and that's what it feels like right now.